Hi, I'm Father Jim Forson, and I'd like to share with you some reflections on the gospel of this 25th Sunday in Ordinary Time. And the gospel today has just a great parable. It's sometimes called the parable of the wily steward. And it's about Jesus is really complimenting in his story this one steward who is found out to have been wasting some of his master's resources. And the master calls him in and says, "What's this I hear about you handling this money and these treasures of mine poorly? Bring in an account of yourself. You're not going to be working for me anymore." In other words, he's going to get fired. And the servant then says to himself, "Oh, what am I going to do now? I can't dig ditches and I can't go out and beg. I'm doomed." So he sits down and thinks, "I know what I'm going to do." So he calls in all of his master's debtors and says, "How much do you owe?" And the guy says, 100 bushels of wheat. "Okay, make it 50. And how much do you owe? 100 jars of oil. "Okay, make it 80. And he starts cutting down how much money they owe, how much goods they owe to the master. And as Jesus says, the master gave credit to that servant, that steward, for being so smart. Because what he was doing was not giving away necessarily the master's portion of that debt. He was giving away his own. Because the way the steward would make money would be by taking a portion of that, what was owed to the master, for himself. He gave away his commission, as it were. And the master saw that. Now, the commission was supposed to go to the master because the steward was going to get fired. But now he couldn't, because there's no way that the master could call in all of these debtors and say, "Yeah, remember how you're only going to give 80? Now forget that, you're giving 100. Or only give 50? No, it's going to be back up." He couldn't, because he would then look cheap and stingy and going back and welching on an agreement. So he was stuck. And the steward did all this so that way, after he got fired, people would like him. People would take him into their house. They would feed him. They'd take care of him. And the master said, "Man, that guy, that was smart." And that's what Jesus is saying. He is saying these dishonest people, the one thing you got to say about them is they know how to handle themselves. And they know how to handle the things of this world. And then he says to his apostles, you have to be just as smart in handling your lives as that dishonest servant is in handling his. Be as smart as the children of this world. And then he finishes by saying, you cannot serve God and mammon. So make a decision. What's it going to be? You're going to serve God, or you're going to serve mammon? And when we hear that word mammon, sometimes it's translated as money, but it's not just that. It's not serving God or money, it's mammon. And mammon is wealth or possessions that are accumulated dishonestly, or that debase us and make us less than what we truly are. And Jesus is saying, what's it going to be? Who are you truly going to serve? And I think we'd all like to say, well, I'll serve God. Well, the way we truly know the answer is, as Jesus said, that servant sat down and figured things out. We need to do the same. We need to sit down, take out our calendars, and simply look to see, where do I spend all my time? That's my master. And is where I'm spending all my time truly honoring, serving God? I've heard about these young doctors that just came out of medical school and are working in the hospital, or these young lawyers that have been hired for the first time by a law firm, and they, to be able to pay off their debts and to be able to be in that hospital or in that law firm, have to work outrageous hours, like 80 hours a week, 5-6 days a week, relentless, and they do it for years. And when I hear that, I think to myself, isn't that nuts? Who wants to live life like that? Who wants to pour out so many years of their life working slavishly? For whom? For whom? That would be for mammon. Now, I realize that everybody's got to make a living and they got to be able to pay off their debts and all of that kind of stuff. But really, is that the way that one wants to live one's life? But then, I'm not worrying about them, but what about me? What about us? How is it that I am spending my life, my time? Am I truly honoring, serving God? What does that even mean? To serve God? Well, I look at the time I'm spending, and am I living that life I want to live? Am I with my family as I wish to be, and my friends, and caring for those who love me and whom I love? Am I investing my life in that way? Is that what is consuming my time? Well, to then that question, are you serving God or are you serving mammon? I think all of us would like to be able to say, I'm going to serve God. And if so, I will then look at the time and how I am spending it and see if that is true. I think we all would like to be able to, well, serving God reminds me of this time when I was studying Spanish in Mexico, in Cuernavaca, and I was living with this family. And the daughter, Lizzie, from time to time would be called by her mother. And the mother would say, Lizzie! And Lizzie would respond, Mándame, señora. And when I first heard that, I thought, huh? And I translated it, and mándame meant, give me a command, order me. And I thought to myself, boy, is that different than how we are in America. You know, my mom calls me, Jim. I answer, what do you want? Or, huh? I don't say mándame. But perhaps that is an idea of how it is to be between ourselves and God. If God is truly my master and I serve him, well then today, as I wake up and begin this day, the first words out of my mouth, Mándame, Señor. Give me your commands. Command me, Master. Your servant is listening.